good to see you, my friends. I hope you're having more fun imagining all the stories you can send back to Avalon. Yes, yes. And do also like, share and subscribe to help things on this side of the mist too. Now, as to today's tale, this one is an old moral that's been told in many ways, but is always worth the hearing. So, if you're ready, I'll tell you the tale of the Two Trees. Now, once an age ago, in the middle of the dark forest, there were two trees. The first was a beautiful blossom tree, tall, straight, and covered in delicate white flowers. The second was a knobbly, bobbly conifer tree. Now, plenty of birds and insects visited the blossom tree to smell its sweet scents and drink its delicious nectar. Whereas the only creature to visit the conifer was a single squirrel that scratched its waxy bark with its sharp claws.
"Why don't you try growing some flowers?"
asked the blossom tree one day.
"Then the birds and insects will visit you too."
"I don't think I can,"
replied the conifer sadly.
"All I have are these pine cones."
Blossom tree laughed.
"Oh well,"
it said smugly.
"I'm beautiful enough for the both of us."
The pine tree felt very sad at this. It longed to have soft leaves and sweet-smelling flowers, and to feel the tickle of bees and birds. It hated having sharp pines that were too prickly, and ugly pine cones that clunked on every branch as they fell. As the seasons passed, the blossom tree's flowers gave way for plums, sweet, juicy fruit. More insects came to visit. Bumbling bees and stripy wasps, glittering beetles and glistening flies, sparrows, pigeons, bluebirds, and crows swooped in and out of its shady branches, keeping out of the beating sun. Still, the only company of the pine tree was the solitary squirrel that scuttered up and down its trunk.
"Why don't you visit my friend, the pine tree?"
the blossom tree suggested to the birds and insects.
"We don't like its prickly branches,"
answered the birds and insects.
"They hurt our feet."
The pine tree heard this and drooped its branches sadly. How unfair that all he wanted was to be as loved as the beautiful blossom tree, and yet his horribly prickly pines meant the animals kept away. The pine tree was very lonely. In time, the blossom tree's leaves began to drift from gleaming green to a rich gold and brilliant red. It waved its branches happily.
"I didn't think I could get any more beautiful, but just look at me."
The pine tree looked on wistfully.
"Yes,
It agreed.
those are very pretty colours. I'm still green."
"Oh, well, maybe you'll change. But maybe you'll be unlucky and stay the same forever."
One day, as the blossom tree was waving its branches in the wind and admiring its beauty, the pine tree noticed something.
"What's that on the floor?"
It asked. The blossom tree gasped.
Oh my! It's one of my leaves! What's happening?
The blossom tree tried its hardest to hold on to its leaves, but nothing could prevent the wind whipping them away. Before long, the last leaf fluttered gently to the floor. The blossom tree's branches were totally bare.
Look at me! I look so ugly and bare!
As the frost came and sprinkled its diamonds through the forest, the birds and insects came looking for some shelter. They stopped in shock when they saw the blossom tree. "What happened?" they exclaimed. "How can we keep warm now?"
You can still nestle in my branches.
Wept the blossom tree. "No, we can't," laughed the birds and insects. "You have nothing to protect us from the frost." The pine tree listened to all this and began to think. True, it wasn't as beautiful as the blossom tree, and its sharp needles weren't as soft as the blossom tree's leaves. However, perhaps it could still help the birds and insects.
If I might be able to shelter you.
The birds and the insects looked at the pine tree. It wasn't going to be as comfortable as the blossom tree, but they were getting colder and colder. "Thank you," they said. "That's very kind of you." They climbed carefully into the pine tree's branches and settled down. To their surprise, they found they were actually warmer than when they used to shelter in the blossom tree, and its branches were sturdier, so the wind didn't bother them. With that, they all settled down for their long winter's sleep. The pine tree stood up proud. It felt very important to be looking after all the birds and animals of the forest. It shook against the cold of the wind, shook off the blanket of snow that covered it, and braved the driving rain. One day, the sun poked its yellow head up over the horizon. The two trees stretched in its warm glow. The pine tree looked over the blossom tree.
What's that?
Tiny green buds had appeared all over the branches of the blossom tree.
Oh, what's happening?
The blossom tree asked.
Your leaves! They're coming back!
Sure enough, before long the blossom tree was covered in delicate white flowers once more. The pine tree shook the birds and insects awake.
Oh, look! Hey, you can all go back to the blossom tree now.
One by one, the birds and insects jumped down. They turned to the pine tree. "Thank you for keeping us warm," they said. "We're sorry we didn't like you."
I'm sorry too. Being beautiful made me arrogant. You're much kinder than me. I hope that one day I can be as kind as you.
And true to his word, the blossom tree was much kinder from then on. The next time you go to a dark forest and the frost has sprinkled its diamonds all around, be kind to the pine trees. You never know who might be hiding in its prickly branches. You see, everything has its part to play. So, never fall into thinking that just because you're on top, you won't ever need someone else's help. Yes, especially as that someone else is normally the person you least expect. Kind words are like seeds, after all. Speaking of seeds, I bet all of your stories and ideas are just growing and growing. Yes. So please do send them in to bard.elven.tales@gmail.com and I can give them the bardic treatment. Yes, and make them into a video like this. Oh, and do also remember to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more. Yes, and I'll see you soon for more Bard Elven Tales. Ha!